Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Live at the Waterhole. We're first up. We're at the Jamala Waterhole in the wonderful Madikwe Game Reserve of the Northwest Province of South Africa. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and what does the bush hold in store for us today? Well, you'll have to sit back, relax, and watch as the animals come down to quench their thirsts and cool off. Now, as per usual, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience, so we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the WildEarth website and registering. You can also join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the hashtag WildEarth. Also on the YouTube live chat. Whatever it is, wildlife related, please send it through. Seems like a nice hot day here, just on the edge of the Botswana border. So we can, as per usual, expect lots of elephants coming down to cool off and, of course, splash around in the mud, get that water in behind their ears, and obviously quench their thirst. This is what they do when it's very hot, and we've seen this a lot at this particular waterhole. Also, being a part of the greater Kalahari system, it is rather semi-arid here, and it does get extremely hot. So the elephants do struggle a little bit with their thermoregulation. Lucky for them, there's lots of water available. And as I said, it looks like it's quite hot here. But that being said, I think it's time for us to go and have a look what the weather's going to be like across all the different locations. So it looks like a bit of a mixed bag. There's a splattering of rain about. I've just returned from Namibia, and in the northern parts of Namibia, lots and lots of rain currently. And so we can expect, especially at Okukuyu, for there to be not too many animals around. When the rain comes, they tend to move into the eastern side of the reserve. But we really do hope that some rain comes through in these parts here in the greater Kalahari system. And that being said, it does seem to be a typical hot summer's day. So, Leopard, thanks for your comment, and nice to be back. It's always wonderful to see what the animals have been up to, and I'm sure with the heat, the elephants have really been enjoying this waterhole, as we've seen in the past. Sometimes even over 100 of them here all at once. Quite a few of the youngsters there really enjoying the water, getting stuck in. And of course, always interesting to watch the interactions with these highly sociable animals in their herds, in their clans, and in their tribes. Looks like a bull there, the one that is a little bit brown in comparison to the others that are quite grey from the clay that they've probably thrown all over themselves. He's looking like he's pursuing some of the females. But it looks like he's also feeling the heat and wants to join in the fun with all the youngsters. And so he's obviously been dust bathing, and that's why he's got that browny color to him. But you'll slowly see his color change now as he has a bath, all down to the soil and the water and stuff that they throw over them. Nice little herd of impala. Also, hopefully get a chance to come in for a drink. So, and of course, the height of summer being the summer solstice on the 22nd of December, the days are already starting to shorten. So, slowly but surely, it will start to cool off as well as we head slowly into autumn and then into winter. So, also a question coming through from Jack2 asking, are the boundaries fenced or are they natural? So, Jack2, the Madikwe Game Reserve is fenced and it's around 80,000 hectares, but it is all indeed fenced. There is a river to the east. But yeah, they're still protected with the fencing. It's more so to keep people out than to keep the animals in. But when you do have dangerous or potentially dangerous animals like elephants, lions, leopards, buffalo, rhinoceros, and the likes, well, it's also a liability thing. So they need to be able to safely secure these animals and that they don't cause any danger to people and the public at large. Looks like some kind of signal has been given, and these Ellies are now pushing off at quite a rate of knots. I wonder what happened to that herd that made them move off in such a hurry. Looks like two bulls here having a bit of a conversation between each other at some distance. I wonder if they're settling their differences. One of the herd members there off on the right, just stopping to have a belly scratch at that tree that's fallen down. Are we going to see a little wrestling match between these two? Seemingly the one on the right being a little bit more subordinate. Yep. Not too keen to engage. I think that bigger one wants to come through and use that scratching post. So, Victor, thanks for your comment. And you're saying hello and welcome back. It's good to be back, Victor. Always miss watching the waterholes. Although I was up in Namibia, in Damaraland, in search of the desert elephants. We didn't have too much time, so we got into the area where they were, but we weren't actually able to find them. We were moving between the Ughab and the Huab rivers, the ephemeral rivers that are in Damaraland, which is just north of the largest mountain or highest mountain in Namibia, the Brandberg. So that is my favorite area of Namibia indeed, and it was lovely to be there. But I can tell you it was stinking hot, sometimes in the areas of about 45 degrees Celsius. Lots of mopani flies or mopani bees around. They can be very irritating. And as I say, with that heat, it was very, very hot. And Lenny commenting, great to hear you, Ralph. Welcome back. Looking forward to learning lots with you. Well, Lenny, that's where I always ask that the viewers send through the questions and sort of drive the conversation. Otherwise, I've got to start delving into all sorts of different topics. But I'd love it for the viewers to drive the topics, and then we'll go down all the different rabbit holes that we love to go down.
This is On Safari. Now remember, this is live and interactive, so we'd love to hear from you.
To be having these incredible experiences in this wild underwater forest.
It was just one of those things which I don't think I'll ever see again in my life.
Thanks for joining us on our Sunrise Safari.
So it looks like these bulls just jostling for space in the shade here. It's also a preferred shady spot under this leadwood tree, nice and close to the waterhole. So they'll be able to go and refresh there too, and they don't have to walk too far. Sorry, I think I muted myself. Well, I was just saying that Elephant bulls, they assess each other's strength through sparring and or play fighting. So we've seen a little bit of that here, but the level of dominance is closely related to a bull's size, power, and weight. And that obviously sometimes is closely correlated with their age. But as bulls mature, these characteristics increase. Bulls that are in must are particularly dominant, and non must bulls and younger males avoid confrontations with them. Must being a period when the bulls have a much higher level of testosterone, sometimes as much as 60 times the normal levels. So you can understand that they're more aggressive and they're more likely to cause sort of fights amongst the different bulls. So they are to be avoided because they're just not in the right mindset. They won't really back down and they will go in for the fight. We must always remember that in the wild, confrontation always comes with risk because they don't have the luxury of being able to go to the hospital, to the doctor, and being fixed up after any kind of confrontation and injury resulting from that confrontation. So, confrontation is to be avoided as far as possible, but when it is for mating rights, it's obviously got a big cause behind it. So then they'll sort of take the risk in that confrontation because then they will indeed achieve the mating rights that they're looking for. So in this region, not being in a high rainfall area, being semi-arid, there is a level of greenery and grass around, and with the trees obviously having had a little bit of moisture from the splatterings of rain, there hasn't been high rainfall, as I've mentioned. But as the months now go into winter, we're going to see these trees sort of start to fade into a browny color, and a lot of them losing their leaves. So we're going to see the transformation as the months now go on. So we have had the African wild dog sighting here. Well, I have had anyway, and well, we always hope that we may see them again. But with the relaxed nature of all of these impala here, I don't think there's any in the sort of close vicinity right now. But you never know; they might sneak up on them. So we'll keep an eye out nonetheless. So, great stuff. Couple of nice questions coming through. And Ollie wants to know what makes elephants so successful at Madikwe. Now, Ollie, it's all down to sort of the water availability first and foremost. So there's, been water made available from the lodges that are here because they've enclosed this area and the animals now can't migrate anymore where they may traditionally or historically have done so. When the waters dry up in these parts, they would have moved to other areas. Now, the permanent water availability is the biggest reason for the success of the elephants. Then, obviously, good food availability. With them having a high food intake and being mega herbivores, there needs to be a lot of food around, which there is. So we're talking now in a population of more or less about 1,500 elephants. So they are saying that it's sort of potentially reaching the carrying capacity. And what the future will hold for these elephants, time will tell. There's been speak of a sort of corridor that they would like to create between the Pilansberg and Madikwe, which could alleviate a little bit of the overpopulation problem. Other than that, then we've spoken about it at length about contraception with the females, and there's also the possibility of vasectomies with selected males. But yes, they are doing very well. I do think that they do struggle a little bit in winter when mainly the food resources that does go down. So they struggle just to get through those times when it's very dry. But as I say, there's always permanent water availability. So I would say that's the number one reason behind the success of the elephants here on Madikwe. Then Diane asking, what predators have we seen here? Diane, I'm not sure on what the other naturalists have seen, but with us watching sort of during the midday, going into the early to late afternoon, we have shifted up the times a little bit, but it's not really conducive to having the likes of leopard and lion and the cats walking around. We know that leopards can walk around during the day, and we have seen them in the Kruger, etc., during the middle of the day, moving around a little bit, but they do prefer the sort of hours of darkness when it's cooler in the late afternoon and early mornings. So the likelihood of us seeing them is much lower, but not impossible, of course. So what we can expect more so is the likes of cheetah, and particularly here at Madikwe is the likes of wild dogs. And that's exactly what I have witnessed here. Right in the middle of the day, we had 5 young males, probably a breakaway group, and I think we watched them for about 3 hours. It was incredible. They got chased off by a big herd of elephants, but they came trotting back, and they lay off to the left of this waterhole, pretty much where we're looking now, where that dead stump is on the left, just off to the left of the waterhole there. They lay around there, then got chased off, and then came back. And I think we even finished with them. So not sure where they disappeared off to, but very exciting. And I hope that we get to see them once more. So I would say that the best chance is once more the cheetah and wild dogs.
Out in the wild, life moves fast. To capture the action, you've got to be in the right spot at the wrong time. Now, incredible animal behavior, selected from amazing amateur and professional footage, to reveal the secret lives of animals in motion. This is raw nature, caught in the act.
So, and as per usual, I always try to bring in some new information and stuff from the interwebs, and I like to delve into all the different studies that have been done. And I found a lovely article on the Smithsonian Magazine website, and this one is written by Caitlin O'Connell Rodwell, titled How Male Elephants Bond. And I thought it's quite apt that we're watching these male elephants. And we've seen this individual here with his floppy ear on a regular basis. So he's a regular visitor here at this waterhole. Bull elephants have a reputation as loners, but research shows that males are surprisingly sociable until it's time to fight. While sipping tea one morning and enjoying the expansive view of a waterhole from my 25-foot tall research tower, I could see a storm of epic proportions brewing. My colleagues, students, volunteers, and I were at Mushara, a remote water source in Namibia's Etosha National Park, to study the dynamics of an all-male society, bull-elephant style. I'd been coming to the site for 19 years to study elephants, and the complexity of the bulls' relationships was becoming more and more striking to me, as we've seen here, with many hours with these bulls and only bulls spending time with each other around this waterhole. Male elephants have a reputation as loners, but in Amboseli National Park in Kenya, where the longest running studies on male elephants have been conducted, bulls have been observed to have a best friend with whom they associate for years. Another study in Botswana found that younger males seek out older males and learn social behaviors from them. And we've also seen this on many occasions throughout all the different locations. And in my previous field seasons at Mushara, I'd noticed that males had not just one close buddy, but several, and that these large groups of males of mixed ages persisted for many years. Of the 150 bulls that we were monitoring in the group, I was particularly interested in which I called the Boys Club. And this is exactly what we've been seeing here and why it interested me so much. And it comprised up to about 15 individuals, a dominant bull and his entourage. Bulls of all ages appeared remarkably close, physically demonstrating their friendship. Why was this group so large and its members so tight? What held them together? And how was dominance decided and maintained? Now, as I trained my binoculars at the waterhole, I looked for answers to these questions and witnessed a showdown. Like many other animals, elephants from a strict hierarchy, which reduces conflicts over scarce resources such as water, food, and mates. At Mushara, an artesian well provides the best water, which is funneled into a concrete trough, a remnant of an old cattle farm built before the area was incorporated into the park. The outflow of the well at the head of the trough, which was the cleanest, most palatable water and is equivalent to the head of a table, was clearly reserved for the top-ranking elephant, the one I referred to as the Don. Very similar here, where these elephants like to go and drink where the water comes out and is at its freshest. We often see conflict at this particular point. So as 5 members of the boys' club arrived for a drink, I quickly noticed that 2 young, low-ranking bulls went up to their usual antics. Jack and Spencer, as I called them, were agitated. They kept shifting their weight and seemed desperate for reassurance, with one or the other holding his trunk out tentatively, as if seeking comfort from a higher-ranking bull's ritualized trunk-to-mouth greeting. Keith and Stoley, more senior bulls, obviously all names given as they've been studying them just to, identify the individuals, ignored these attempts at engagement. They offered no reassuring gestures, such as a trunk over a youngster's back or an ear over a head or rear. Instead, they and the younger bulls seemed to be watching Greg, the Don, and he was obviously in a foul temper. Greg, who was about 40 years old, was distinguishable by 2 square notches out of the lower portion of his left ear. But there was something else, something visible from a long way off that identified him. This guy had the confidence of a general, the way he held his head, his casual swagger. And for years now, whenever Greg strutted up to the waterhole, the other bulls slowly backed away to give him access. When Greg settled in to drink, each bull in turn approached him with an outstretched, quivering trunk, dipping the tip into Greg's mouth as though kissing a human Don's ring. After performing this ritual and seeing a placated Greg, each bull's shoulders seemed to relax and each slouched submissively away from Greg's preferred drinking spot. It was behavior that never failed to impress me. One of those reminders that human beings are not as unique in social complexity as we like to think. This culture was steeped in ritual. Despite the other male's deference, Greg still seemed agitated. He fitfully shifted his weight from one front foot to the other and spun his head around to watch his back and give his best stink eye to some phantom pursuer, as if somebody had tapped him on the shoulder in a bar, trying to pick a fight. So I scanned the horizon to see if any more elephants were heading in that direction. Considering Greg increasing agitation, I thought he might be sensing an approaching rival, which we often see here too. In my earlier research here, I've discovered that elephants can hear rumbles too deep for human hearing and use their feet and trunks to sense the rumbles that travel through the ground for miles. Elephants can even recognize one another through these vibrations. Perhaps Greg sensed a bull in must. A male entering the hormonal state of must is supposed to experience a kind of Popeye effect, the equivalent of downing a can of spinach that trumps established dominance patterns. Not even alpha males would risk challenging a bull elephant with a heightened level of testosterone. Also, that's what we thought. An elephant is looking for a mate with such singularity of purpose that he hardly takes the time to eat or drink. He engages in exaggerated displays of aggressiveness, such as curling the trunk across the brow with ears waving, presumably to facilitate the wafting of a sticky, musty secretion from the temporal glands above the cheek, just behind the eye, while excreting urine, sometimes to the point of gushing. And the message, the elephant equivalent of "don't even think about messing with me because I'm so crazy mad that I'll tear your head off." Other bulls seem to understand this body language quite well, and so do we as guides. While Greg twitched, the mid-ranking bulls were in a state of upheaval. Each seemed to be showing his good relations with higher-ranking individuals. Spencer leaned against Keith on one side and Jack on the other, placing his trunk in Keith's mouth, Keith being a favorite of the Don. And the most sought-after connection was with Greg himself, who often allowed certain privileged lower-ranking individuals to drink right next to him. But today, Greg was in no mood for brotherly backslapping. Stoley, who ordinarily enjoyed Greg's beneficence, cowered in the overflow from the trough, the lowest-ranking position where water quality was the poorest. He sucked his trunk as if uncertain how to negotiate his place in the hierarchy. By now in the tower for 2 hours, nearly noon, the day had turned hot and bleak. It was a particularly dry year, so the trees were parched and the clearing especially stark. As Greg became more and more agitated, there was the sense that nobody wanted to be in the presence of an angry Don. Finally, the explanation strode in on 4 legs, his shoulders high and head up, clearly looking for trouble. It was the third-ranking bull, Kevin, the group bully who frequently sparred with the lower-ranking bulls. I could identify him by his wide-splayed tusks and bald tail. Could also see the telltale sign of urine dribbling from his penis sheath, and judging from his posture and long stride, he appeared to be ready to take on Greg, and Kevin was obviously in must. I had never witnessed a must bull challenging a dominant bull, and as Kevin arrived at the waterhole, I was on the edge of my seat. I suspected that Greg had been avoiding Kevin, and I fully expected Greg either to back down or to get the daylights beaten out of him. Everything I'd read suggested that a rival in must had the advantage in a fight with a top-ranking bull. Such confrontations have even been known to end in death. Now, the story does continue on quite a little bit, so I will break it up a little bit, and I don't want to be talking on all the time. So let's just enjoy what I have spoken about, and I'll continue on it in a little bit as we enjoy these bulls in their natural environment. So as we ponder on what happens next in the story with Greg the Don, a couple of questions coming in from Lenny asking, if a male had a vasectomy, would it no longer go into must? That is the thing, Lenny. What actually happens is that they just cut out a little portion of the tubes. So all the normal sort of processes with the elephants continues, and they even mate with the females, but they do not become pregnant. So it is sort of thought to be one of the better ways to sort of assist in population control. But there's still, the studies are in their infancy, and how it will affect the social sort of structures, etc., of the elephants. Time will only tell, because if the elephants are mating with the females and they don't become pregnant, will there be social issues around the females that because they don't become pregnant? That's the issue, I think, that is really prevalent and what they're concerned about. So, but yes, they do still go into must. And Paul is saying, thanks for all the research that you do. And thanks for watching, Paul. Thanks for your comment. And yeah, it also makes me research. So I learn lots from the research as well. So it's fantastic. Coco Babies says, beautiful Ellies. They're always fun to watch, and how stunning it is indeed, Coco Babies. Thanks for your comment. Interesting how you watch this bull on the right, just hanging his trunk over his tusk. It's sometimes just a bit of an indication of the mood that they're in. Sometimes just resting. It all depends on the individual and on the current situation. Now, only a few bulls go into must at any one time, and the prevailing theory is that this staggering of bulls must allows lower ranking males to gain a temporary advantage over higher ranking ones by becoming so agitated that dominant bulls won't want to take them on, even in the presence of a female ready to mate. And this mechanism allows more males to mate rather than just the don, which makes the population more genetically diverse.
Fancy playing safari snaps? Or showing off your photo skills in fun competitions? How about sneak peeks of our brand new camera spots and live chats with fellow Africam fans? Well, Africam All Access has got your back. Just head to Africam's YouTube channel, hit the join button, and select Africam All Access. You'll unlock Africam premium website perks and all the VIP benefits of our YouTube memberships.
So, continuing on with the story of Greg the Don and his boys' club. Now, although females do not go into estrus at the same time, more of them tend to become fertile at the end of the rainy season, which allows them to give birth in the middle of another rainy season when more food is available. Long-term studies in Amboseli indicate that dominant bulls tend to come into must when a greater number of females are in estrus, and they maintain their must longer than younger, less dominant bulls. But this was the dry season, and Greg exhibited no signs of must. At the waterhole, Kevin swaggered up for a drink. The other bulls backed away, like a crowd avoiding a street fight. Not Greg. He marched clear around the water with his head held high, back arched, straight towards Kevin. And Kevin immediately started backing up. I had never seen an animal back up so sure-footedly, even kept his posture even and wide gait, only in reverse. After a retreat of about 50 yards, Kevin squared off to face his assailant, and Greg puffed himself up and kicked dust in all directions. He lifted his head even higher and made a full frontal attack. Two mighty heads collided in a dusty clash. Tusks met in an explosive crack, with trunks tucked under bellies to stay clear of the mighty blows. Greg held his ears out to the side, with the top and bottom portions folded backward and the middle protruding, an extremely aggressive posture. And using the full weight of his body, he raised his head again and slammed Kevin with his tusks. Dust flew, with Kevin in full retreat. I couldn't believe it. A high-ranking bull in must was getting his hide kicked. A must bull was thought to rise to the top of the hierarchy and remain there until his testosterone levels returned to normal, perhaps as long as several months. What was going on? But just when I thought Greg had won, Kevin dug in. With their heads only inches apart, the two bulls locked eyes and squared up again, muscles taut. There were false starts, head thrusts from inches away, and all manner of insults cast through foot tosses, stiff trunks, and arched backs. And these two seemed equally matched, and for half an hour the fight was a stalemate. Then Kevin lowered his head. Greg seized the moment. He dragged his own trunk on the ground and stamped purposefully forward, lunging at Kevin until the lesser bull was finally able to maneuver behind a concrete bunker we use for ground-level observations. Foot stamping in a sideways dance, thrusting their jaws out at each other, the two bulls faced each other across the bunker. Greg tossed his trunk across the 9-foot divide in what appeared to be frustration. At last, he was able to break the standoff, catching Kevin in a sideways attack and getting him out in the open. Kevin retreated a few paces, then turned and walked out of the clearing, defeated. I was blown away by what I had just witnessed. A high-ranking bull in must was supposed to be invincible. Were the rules of must different for bulls that have spent most of their time in a close social group? Kevin hadn't frightened Greg. If anything, Kevin's must appeared to fuel Greg's aggression. Greg, I realized, would simply not tolerate a usurpation of his power. We've seen this. We've seen a lot of fighting around this waterhole, and I think this is just a lovely depiction of the kind of behavior that we've witnessed between bulls, and obviously in a studied research paper, an article. Now, my mind raced over the possible explanations. Had Tosh's arid environment created a different social atmosphere than Amboseli's, where similar conflicts had the opposite outcome? Perhaps water scarcity influenced social structure, even the dynamics of must. Could it be that the Don had influence over the other male's hormones? This phenomenon is well documented in the primate world, and in 2 instances in South Africa, when older bulls had been reintroduced to a territory, younger bulls had then cycled out of must. Did a bull have to leave his group to go into must? This episode with Kevin made me think that just might be the case. And apologies for any human voices that you might hear in the background. They're chatting away from the Jamala Lodge viewpoint, and they're watching the same episode that we're watching with these pretty relaxed bulls here. Nothing like the story that I'm busy depicting. And that would explain why must bulls are usually alone when they search for females. When the dust settled, some of the lower-ranking bulls still seemed to be agitated, and the boys' club never really returned to normal for the rest of the day. In the early afternoon, Greg determined it was time to leave. He set the trajectory, leaning forward and laying his trunk on the ground, as if gathering information to inform his decision. He remained frozen in that position for more than a minute before pointing his body in a new direction. When Greg finally decided to head west, he flapped his ears and emitted a long, barely audible low-frequency call that has been described as a let's go rumble. This was met with ear flapping and lower rumbles from several other bulls. On some days, I'd seen him give a shove of encouragement to a younger bull reluctant to line up and leave the waterhole. This time, it was Keith who was balking. Greg put his head against Keith's rear and pushed. The bulls finished drinking and headed out in a long line, Greg in the front. Very, very interesting indeed. So there's still a little bit of time to go, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to be watching these elephants for quite some time. So I'll continue on this article as we go on with the show. The time now, I think, for me to be quiet and for us to listen to the sounds of nature.
Welcome to Destination Safari WildEarth travel show that showcases luxury safari destinations. We explore the intimate thatched safari lodge located here in a valley lined by indigenous vegetation in the northern section of Amakhala Game Reserve.
So you can see here all these bulls approaching very gingerly, slowly, and obviously there's a kind of hierarchy structure, even within the smaller groups when they come together. Now, dominance among female elephants means leading, and the matriarch decides where the group should go and when. Dominance in bulls has been thought to be different, a temporary measure of who can stay on top of the heap, who could physically overpower the other members of the group and mate with the most females. It isn't about caring whether the group sticks together, but dominance seemed to mean something more complicated to these bulls that we have been describing. I began to wonder whether I was witnessing not just dominance, but something that might be called leadership. Greg certainly appeared to be rounding up the group and leading his bulls to another carefully selected venue. As I watched the Bulls Club disappear in a long chalky line into the trees, I wondered if paying respects to the Don went beyond maintaining the pecking order. I felt a little crazy even thinking it, but these bull elephants who weren't necessarily related were behaving like family. A few seasons have passed since that afternoon in Etosha. This past summer, Greg developed a gaping hole near the tip of his trunk, probably an abscess. It caused him to spill water as he drank. He appeared to have lost a lot of weight, and he spent a lot of time soaking his wound after drinking. He seemed extremely grumpy, as you would be with a huge abscess, casting off friendly overtures with a crack of his ears. It looked like he didn't want company. Yet on occasion he still came to the Waterhole with his younger contingent, Keith, Tim, and Spencer, as well as some new recruits, Little Donnie and Little Richie. The newcomers made me wonder if Greg might pull through his rough patch. The youngsters were fresh out of their matriarchal families and looking for company, and they seemed eager to be by Greg's side. Despite his crabby mood, Greg seemed to still know how to attract young constituents, those that might be there for him during conflicts with challengers who weren't in must. As we were packing up to leave for the season, Greg lumbered in for one of his long drinking sessions, his new recruits in tow, and the younger bulls had long since left the area by the time Greg had finished soaking his trunk and was ready to depart. Despite being alone, he initiated his ritual rumbling as he left, his long, low calls unanswered, as if engaging in an old habit that wouldn't die. Now, as you can imagine, it was a haunting scene, and I stopped to watch through my night vision scope. I couldn't help but feel sorry for him as he stood at the edge of the clearing. What was he waiting for? Later, I got my answer. I heard rumbles in the distance, two bulls vocalizing. When I looked through my night vision scope once again, I saw that Greg was with Keith. Perhaps Keith, having had his drink hours earlier, had returned to collect him. Greg and Keith walked out together, each in turn rumbling and flapping his ears. They lumbered up a path and out of sight. I felt relieved. Just another wonderful recollection of the story of elephants, and I think very interesting that we see a lot of these bull elephants hanging out here. It would be interesting for us to work out who the Don is in this particular instance, if we could see that. And I've seen this bull with a floppy ear on many occasions, and I wonder if he might indeed be the Don of this boys' club. Now, Elizabeth asking a very pertinent question in what could be the cause of a floppy ear. Now, Elizabeth, I've seen it in youngsters and I've seen it in elderlies as well. And I do believe that this is quite an old elephant, maybe in or around about 40 years or so. So sometimes it's just as a result of an injury, remembering that it is cartilage. And sometimes when there's an infection or an injury up near the top of the ear, it can affect that soft cartilage, and that it does then become a little bit floppy and it's not held out like it would normally be. So normally one of those, an injury, well, it could be both. It could be an injury that leads to an infection and then sort of leads to that cartilage not being able to be held up firmly anymore. And as I say, I've seen it in youngsters where it normally does repair itself, and it is only temporary. Normally, when you see it in adults like this, it's more permanent, depending on the injury or the cause of the floppiness in the first place. But we've seen this now over a couple of months, and I would suggest that this particular floppiness on this individual would be permanent. The advantage for us, though, however, it does give us a much easier way of identifying this particular individual, as none of the rest have got the floppy nature that he does. So you see, currently, I'm not sure how much fresh water is in fact coming out. So you can see the trunk writhing around there, obviously maybe trying to suck the fresh water out. I don't know if it's really coming out too much. So I think that's what might just be going on. And as I've been saying that, I just want to remind all the viewers that this is a live and interactive experience. So we'd love for you to jump on board with us. Send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the WildEarth website and registering. Also, join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, also on the YouTube live chat. We'd love to hear from you. I'm just trying to see what those little baby birds are up on the left-hand side there. It looks like tiny little chicks moving around just in front of that rock. And we'll just try and get the camera in on them after we have a closer look at the elephant. But just at the top of your screen there, below that big rock, there's a lot of little chicks swimming around. Not sure if it's from the Egyptian geese. They're all on their own. Where's Mama and Papa? It does look like Egyptian geese. And the adults wouldn't normally be too far away. Counted 6 of them. Why are they all on their own? We just have a scan, and we can see if they're hiding somewhere. So while we are scanning around and just seeing where the adults are, maybe they're just behind this little island in the middle. I'm not quite sure, but I would think they're not very far. Anyway, Leopard Lover asking, Ralph, have you ever visited the salt pans in Namibia, and do the animals go there? Leopard Lover, I'm not sure which salt pans you're referring to. I've visited pretty much all the salt pans in Namibia, however, regardless, and that goes from the Etosha pan itself. And with that particular one, yes, the animals do like going out onto the pan. I think there's a sense of solitude as well as being able to see for very long distance. There's no cover, so I think they feel rather safe. So yeah, and I've also seen that the elephants have crossed the pan itself. So lots of animals, from zebra to wildebeest to elephants, do indeed go onto the pan, but there's no food or water there for them. So it's only temporary, and then they do leave. The other salt pans that we do have, normally around Walvis Bay, and sort of north of Swakopmund, there's obviously the flamingos that frequent these areas because there's a lot of algae and shrimp that like the salinity in the water. So lots of flamingos in particular. And then furthering on that, asking, are you allowed to take salt from natural sources in Africa? A leopard lover, as you know, as long as you don't commercially cultivate it or harvest it, yes, there's many sort of salt flays or pans that we do have, and I mean we've taken little samples of it, but I've never really seen anybody harvesting it to any great degree, except for those real salt pans that are farmed salt areas. We do have some in South Africa as well. But then, as I say, as a commercial operation, farmed, whereas in these natural environments, from a national park and any of the protected areas, you're not allowed to take or retrieve anything. And so any kind of horns or even feathers and porcupine quills, you're not theoretically supposed to take anything from any of these protected areas. So yeah, sometimes obviously people do, and especially the feathers and maybe a porcupine quill, the odd porcupine quill here or there. But taking out skulls and horns is highly illegal and is not encouraged. And most of these are taken from private reserves where the owners have allowed them. Oh, hello, there's a big bird. Let's just come down on the opposite bank. Is it a bird of prey? Just in front of that fallen down log, or is it the Egyptian geese that I was looking for? No, yes, it is indeed the adults that I was hoping were somewhere around. I'm pretty sure that these would be mom and dad. Looks like they're calling for their chicks. And we should see them come along quite quickly. There's an impala ram also walks through in the background trying to get a drink. Those little chicks have ventured quite far from these adults. The one in the background there just grazing on the grass. Typical display of the Egyptian geese between pairs. They do pair for life. Looks like the one adult off to go and round up the chicks. So, Leopard Lover just saying, I didn't know you aren't allowed to take feathers from national parks. Should you find one? Leopard Lover, it's obviously not an enforced sort of rule because, there's, feathers, maybe you can get away with that. But theoretically, you should not be taking anything out of protected parks, national parks, and nature reserves, because it all forms part of this sort of natural cycle of degradation and returning of nutrients into the soil, etc. But of course, taking a feather out, I think we'll let you get away with that one. And obviously, sometimes you pick up a porcupine quill or whatnot, but it's just to discourage the general nature or behavior of taking things out of protected areas, because it's important for micro ecosystems, etc., and all forms part of the system. So preferring not to encourage that in any way, but I'm sure you get away with one little feather. So yes, I think we're all guilty of it, but it shouldn't be encouraged. And then Alvaro Q was hoping that the water isn't contaminated. I'll say Alvaro, I wouldn't say so. I think it just gets muddied up a little bit with the elephants rolling around in the dirt. However, they do have very strong stomach acids, so they don't generally get sick very easily from the water that they drink. With the elephants, per se, I think it's just purely a preference, but they would be able to drink the water even if it was muddied up and slightly contaminated. I think the waters do become a bit more contaminated when they're very stagnant. And the biggest thing that we generally have where the animals get sick from stagnant water holes, and especially when it starts becoming a bit drier, is anthrax, which is a natural cycle of events and a sickness that is prevalent. But generally, I would say there's not really a problem with even these water holes that are pretty stagnant. But there's a lot of movement in them, from the elephants to the geese to the frogs and the fish and everything that does sort of live in the waterhole itself. So there becomes once again this natural sort of balance and ecosystem within these waterholes as well.
WildEarth Travel, in association with Wandering Through, is offering some exclusive, privately guided safaris in 2024. James is taking a trip into the famed woodlands of the mysterious White Lion, Ngala Private Game Reserve, in July. Steve and Cedric will lead a safari to Chitwa Chitwa in November. To book, email travel@wildearth.tv or go to the website for more information. We are looking forward to seeing you on safari.
You see, sort of flicking the trunk forwards, almost tasting the water, seeing where the best tasting area may be. Maybe also just trying to get rid of any flotsam and jetsam. Doesn't want to be sunking that up, especially if he's going to be drinking it. They don't mind, and they in fact prefer the nice muddied water when they're going to be spraying that in behind their ears and over their back, because it lasts longer and it sticks to their bodies much better than if it was just water. They would just run off them. So there's the different waters, and muddy or not, for the different purposes that they're looking for. Now, a comment coming in from Trixie Rose saying, "Yay, hi Ralph, happy Monday. Happy Monday back at you, Trixie Rose. Lovely to have you on board with us." And Dark Main Lover, once again, saying, "I have not seen any crocodiles here. Does Madikwe Jamala have them or a different waterhole?" So, Dark Main Lover, I haven't seen crocodiles here either. And I would suggest that there aren't any at this particular waterhole. However, at the other one that we have here in at Africam Tau in the Madikwe Game Reserve, there is at least 5 big adult crocodiles, and in fact, there's one been nesting just recently. Apparently, they haven't been successful in the sort of last few years because there's mongoose and water monitor lizards, etc., that keep digging up the nests and eating all the eggs before they can hatch. So who knows? Maybe this year is the year when they are successful and we'll see some new small crocodiles in that waterhole. But yes, nice big adults there. And the other day, it was a little while ago, not sure how it happened. We didn't see it live, but they had what I believe was a young or a calf, a buffalo calf that the crocodiles were fighting over and feeding on. So very interesting couple of days that we spent with them there as they were fighting over the remains of this young buffalo. So yeah, we can always speculate as to what happened, whether it was hunted by them, or whether it was or they stole it from lions, or they scavenged it, or it died. I have no idea. All we know is that they were indeed eating an animal that looked very much like a baby buffalo.
This is On Safari. In this particular case, it looks like he's made a coalition with his sons.
I'm sure this afternoon is going to be a fantastic drive, as always.
Now remember, this is live and interactive, so we'd love to hear from you.
As he's going in now on that favorite scratching post. They all love that one in particular. Just the right height. Something very interesting that might be for African travelers is that if anybody knows Namibia, it's always a wonderful sight when the water and the Tsochab River flows and the water goes down to Sossusvlei, which is a very iconic part of Namibia and a very well visited tourist site. And at the Sesrim Canyon yesterday, the river was flowing, and I've actually got a video on my social media pages that shows the water actually flowing through the canyon itself. So who knows, maybe it will be heading through and making its way all the way down to Sossusvlei. So worthwhile checking that out. And if it does reach through all the way to Sossusvlei, you can have the flamingos that also pull in there. So a beautiful wildlife spectacle, something well worth looking into. As this old bull now decides he's had enough and he's heading up this very well-used elephant highway. So the impala getting the waterhole back to themselves. They do need to fight sometimes for areas to come in and drink here when there's lots of elephants around. So when they've all moved off, they need to take advantage and come in for a drink. Still lots of birds also coming in, mainly doves, ring-necked doves, coming in quenching their thirst as well. And there's our little Egyptian geese chicks too, with one of the adults in attendance. So these little chicks are busy, and at this age, they're also able to swim underwater, and that's how they evade predators and anything coming along the surface as well. They merely dive under the water very fast, and obviously they don't do that as much as adults. They are able to swim under the water, but obviously they have a lot more buoyancy as they get older, so much easier for them to do that when they're little chicks. All right, so as previously mentioned, it is now time for us also to introduce all of the AfriCam waterholes and locations, and that does give us obviously then a lot more places that we can go to and a lot more excitement.